The third one I think is that they're the Nephilim. The second one, I mean, is that they're Nephilim, and then the third one is that they're like a hybrid. It's like they aren't on another planet, but they aren't necessarily. It's like they like demons, and it's like they like a literal mix, like a mix. But then it's like if I believe in the Bible, it's like if there's heaven and hell, it's like, well, then they didn't come from heaven, so then you get what I'm saying. So, but it's like they're not full it's like they're like some type of hybrid. What did any of those three things that you believe, or do you believe a fourth ideology?
I would say
Now I know what you're thinking. What you guys, what you're selling. Now look, I know you all are on social media every day, especially people who trying to sell a business. You trying to promote your stuff. You trying to spread your message. You got the calling. You got the word from the Lord. All that good stuff, right? But you don't feel like it. You don't have the time to promote the social media. You don't have the time to create the content calendars. You don't have the time for none of that, right? So that is where my new package comes in. And this is called the Trust Builder Package. All right. So this is for those of you who want to create great social media content, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, YouTube. All right. And you need somebody to do your captions, descriptions for you that are high SEO that'll get you pushed out there to the masses and to find your personal development audience, because you are more than likely a personal development influencer. So who does this cater to? Coaches and consultants, faith-based leaders, wellness experts, authors, podcasters, motivational speakers, educators, mental health advocates, you name it. All of you who are trying to see the betterment of your community. All right, this package is for you. All right, hit me up in the DM, email me, reach out on the Nazio platform, and I'll hook you up. What's up, y'all? We are back for another episode. Now look, now y'all know you see my Naruto shirt. So now this is actually, y'all know I shop at Hypeland a lot, right? So shout out to them. But this shirt I actually bought. It's like when Naruto was fighting Sasuke on the bridge. It's like towards the end of the series, the original series before Shippuden, right? But here's the thing. So this shirt is one of his earlier designs. He was good. He had decent designs back then, but if you keep up with Hypeland now, 2025 today, they didn't really went up. But this shirt, it's funny because this shirt I had got because they was about to end the collab with Naruto. I guess the contract was ending. And so I saw this shirt on the website for like $15 because originally these type of shirts run for like 90, but it was like $15 and it probably only had a few left. So you probably go ahead and get rid of these. Yeah, so that's how I got it. And it's interesting I got this on today because we talking about what we talking about. You've seen the title, so we gonna get into that. But first, let me get into this week's meme. The meme for this week reads, what's a conspiracy theory you 100% believe? Now, when it comes to conspiracy theories, y'all, I know a lot of people, write them all off. That's all fake. At this point in time, we live in the information age. I just don't see how you would sit here and say that all of them are fake. I don't see how you could do it. I don't see how you could do it. But, people do, and that's just what it is, right? But what I can say is I think that a lot of them, what's interesting to me is a lot of believers actually are hesitant with conspiracy theories. Like they just be like, oh, that's conspiracy theory. That's conspiracy theory. And I just be like, y'all, I don't know. Now, let's get into the inspiration for this week. So the inspiration for this week comes from my guest today. Now, I haven't introduced him yet, clearly, because you don't see him. But what's funny about the situation is he DM'd me something about a conspiracy theory and then was just kind of going on a rant about it. And I was just like, and I kind of been thinking about doing conspiracy theory episode, and I may go even more in depth because we'll just see how this one goes. But I just thought that was interesting that he DM'd me that. And I was just like, I'm doing a social media series. You want to pop up? We're talking about something. Why not? So here we are. Also, a quote that I actually just got today from a book that I'm rereading. So y'all know every year I fell off. I don't think I did it last year. I know I did it 23. I've been doing this since 2016. The Soul Fast by Cindy Trim. It's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. 40-day. You should check it out. I think the book only like $8, $9, something like that. But it's a quote that she had in the book, and it says, "Hiding your thoughts isn't an option. Eventually, whatever you harbor in the innermost corridors of your thought life will sooner or later reveal itself in the outer arena of your present experience." And I think that with this aligning with conspiracy theories, I believe that a lot of these are thoughts, conversations, etc. And of course, you know, you can go on a rabbit hole down TikTok, but I think sometimes if you internalize them a little too much, it can kind of, I see why people be going crazy. Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump into today, y'all. Let's get into y'all favorite segment, which is happy hour. So for today's happy hour, I just want to go on a quick rant about a conspiracy theory, you know, that's been hit the world. You know, it's so many. You know, I'm gonna take it there because we are gonna do, you know, the politics episode and you know all these things. So one, when it comes to politics, let me add, I don't trust in no politician. So I don't believe, and I'm not telling people not to vote. That's not what I'm saying. um you know, a lot of people don't vote, and I'm gonna be honest with you and put them on blast, and I'm not gonna say no names. A lot of people in the last election did not vote. They're not going to tell you that because they don't want to get canceled. So that's all that is. They ain't gonna tell you that they want to. They want you to. They don't want you to look at them differently. So when they come up, pay attention to who get quiet. And now I know we ain't getting into politics until next week, so I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I have a great person for that. And you've seen him before on the pod and on the Mental Man Monday. But yeah, I think it's interesting that with politics. But one thing I will say, and I'm gonna bring this back up next week, but what if he's not a savior? But what if Donald Trump, what if he was doing things that actually was benefiting us behind the scenes, and they're painting them to hate him, painting the world to hate him because he's going against their agenda and their timeline. Who is they? The higher ups. People say, "Oh, I don't believe in that." Well, you need to. What if he is this? Now I can say he ain't a savior. Is he? He's a person who is unhinged. You know, people say he's racist. I mean, here's the thing: is he racist? Could he be? Maybe. I guess. I personally don't think he is. I think he's more so just extremely ignorant and old and unhinged. But is he probably? Could he be racist? I mean, he might be. I don't know. But here's the thing: you hear people like me say stuff like that, and then you think Trump supporter. No, I don't have a "Make America Great Again" hat. I know judgment is coming to America, so it's nothing that I can't. You know, it is what it is. But I always thought, like, one thing I've learned, and I've been in this, I'm not gonna say this industry because I'm still technically not on, but I've been paying attention. I'm a patterns person. You know, Tiffany Montgomery says she's a pattern recognition specialist. She made that phrase up, and I don't believe in taking people phrases, so I'm gonna use that's the phrase she made up. But I'm that as well. I'm a pattern recognition specialist, and I've always noticed that when it seems like the world is like pushed to hate somebody, it's because they're doing something really, even if they don't realize it, they're doing something godly. I did on my live stream weeks ago, you know, Nicki Minaj. Why is she speaking out of all people about Christians being persecuted in Nigeria? Why is she, of all people, speaking out on that? A female rapper. That's not weird to nobody. And why did she lose followers? Because she got to speak at the White House with Donald Trump. And that's something I said on that live stream, which I'm going to reiterate again here. Now, I don't want to get too off because I feel like we're going to have a good conversation today. But like, they nailed her to the cross for that. And then they unfollow her because they say she's supporting Donald Trump. This is still authority. You could still not like somebody or care for the way they run in the country and be like, you're giving me opportunity to speak on something I agree with. Because at the end of the day, you can hate that person, but what if y'all agree on the same thing? And this is something that she's passionate about. So you're going to miss an opportunity to speak about something you're passionate about because of who's over it. I just think, and that's a slippery slope, right? But I just think in that case, you know, but feel free to push back. I want to be pushed back. I won't smoke as we end off this season. But I have a great guest today, y'all. This is somebody who I've been following for a while. Don't even know how we start following each other. But you know, I'm everybody's favorite internet friend. And so he is somebody who got some good stuff going on. And I think that, you know, he's getting the ball rolling. So hopefully hope this episode makes him say, like, he need to get in the booth tonight. He live in Houston, but he's Midwest like myself. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest for today, and let's get going. My guy,
What's going on?
how you feeling today on this beautiful day?
Man, it's another day, bro. I can't complain at all. I'm feeling great, bro.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. So now, can you tell the people? Obviously, my audio people can see you. Visual people can see you, but for my audio people, can you tell them what's your name, where you from, and where you live now?
What's going on, everybody? My name is Jonty. Um, I'm from Dayton, Ohio, but I'm down in here in Houston, keeping everything going. We got some good stuff going on.
Okay. Now, tell the people what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I'm a son of God, so really I testify, my goal is to live a life that gives God glory. But I make Christian music, gospel music, people got different categories, whatever. I make music for the Lord, testifying and helping people see the God within themselves, helping people see the goodness within themselves. And then I also, I work at a rec center and I mentor middle school and high school kids working with a organization called Young Life.
Okay. Okay. Now, as a Midwestern like myself, and you live in Texas now, do you see or do you notice a difference in how people like approach faith and like information between the different regions? Because you know where we from, people, it depends on who you ask. For the most part, you know, Midwest people aren't the most friendly. Well, we are, but we're not compared to Southerners. I'll say that. I know St. Louis people not friendly at all. And I don't know how many you didn't encounter, but they usually not friendly. I am, but again, they're not. So, how would you answer that question?
I mean, there is some differences. I don't see as many differences when it comes to faith, but when it comes to just normal information and processing and the way that people think and move, I do see differences. But like a lot of people understand the South, a lot of people like compliment the South, maybe because a lot of people have been to the South, different things like that. But
Yeah,
I feel like Southerners don't really understand Midwesterners. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So I think we're more like straight to the point,
Mm-hmm.
like more kind of maybe more strict. But Southerners, they say Southern hospitality. I say that's a real thing. I say
Yeah,
that's a real thing.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, so now one thing that you know we talk about thought processes and how people think. We just kind of touched on that and this difference. What is it about how a person thinks that stands out to you, especially when we on the topic of like conspiracy theories? That's what we're thinking
Mhm.
about today, right? We're speaking on that today, and you know, so many people. I remember back in the day when they used to talk about the Illuminati, right? And they still do. You know, back when that was just the craziest thing to believe in.
Yeah.
Now it's like it's clear as day. But back then, I remember I remember one of my homeboys, this was in college, and he had said, y'all really believe them videos? People go home and make those videos. Like, so how, you know, and I'm like, but if you're going off that stance, you could compare a YouTube video about the Illuminati to the Bible, couldn't you? Because you could say, well, a human made that. Now, again, you could then say, well, Holy Spirit necessarily didn't inspire the YouTuber to make that video.
Hmm.
I'm sure there have been some that have. When it comes to thinking in frameworks and just thinking outside the box, what helps you separate fact from faith or truth from trend?
Mm. No, that's a really good question because like it's deep waters.
Yeah.
Like there's so many types of conspiracies and ideas and it's just hearsay everywhere, right? So and then we live in a social media age, so you getting opinions from this way and that way, upside down, everywhere around. I think the first thing is to stop consuming like unintentionally.
Yeah.
Like if you're just taking in anything, and that's what your feed is going to do. Your algorithm is based off of you, but it's still not what you're putting into it. So you're just, you're looking at all these different types of things. You don't know what you're taking in. So it tends to like pollute what's already inside of you. So I think the best thing is being intentional, because if you know what you want, then you can figure out how to get to that. And I think a lot of people, I know for me, my biggest misunderstanding with life was the order. I
Hmm.
thought that at first I thought that I set the order. Then I came to, let me not recreate the game. Let me get in where I fit in and create my own space. So I found that being intentional, that's the biggest thing. Like you gotta choose a side, you gotta stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I know a lot of people heard that. So that's the first thing. It's kind of just looking at everything that's going on in his world and distinguishing things.
Yeah.
Like everything can't sit right with you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But another thing that I would say is obviously, going to God for yourself and asking for discernment. That's the biggest layer in itself, because you gotta ask the creator. But as far as independent thinking and like how to maneuver through the mental space, I think you have to write things down. You have to be diligent with reading,
Yeah.
because you can't depend on the person to deliver you the full scope of information. People are meant to lead you to the water, not to make you drink it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think because we live in this day and time, it just makes us like, maybe we expect things to just naturally come to us instead of going out on the actual, like, the search. You know what I'm saying? To like, let me figure out what's going on. Because if you look at the Illuminati topic, like you said, that thing was, that conversation was jumping. But now we see all this stuff. We see the celebrities, all the award shows and all that stuff. Like they put it right in front of your face, but the majority of people, they don't have a solution. So we just exist with it, rather than actually get to the bottom of what's going on.
And it's interesting with that because you're an upcoming Christian artist, right? And I believe, and I said this, and I call hell for, but I think we're starting to see it now, that we're going to see. I know what's her name, prophetess. I call her Lady Quan, but she's based out of Atlanta. Laquan Green, and she's she don't call herself a YouTuber. She said her platform is an altar, right?
Mhm.
But I've heard her say for the last few years, especially, that there was the 7 mountains of influence. And I don't want to jump ahead of myself because, like, next week's episode is politics, and the week after the series finale and the season finale and the series finale is social media influence.
Mhm.
But what I will say is, she talks about the mountains of influence, one of them being arts of and entertainment. And I just had believe. I said, I don't believe that all of these people, that God is going to call people to like every specter, but then it's like, I'm leaving entertainment. Nah, people can't go there. And I
Right.
believe at one point that it was, I'm not going to say people couldn't, but it was rare. I feel like we're going to see a push of many bold believers who aren't sold out in those spaces. And it's going to be, things are going to be a little different. Like I said, people try to say at first, well, nah, you can't go there. We can't go there. And it's like, but why? And I got, because it's too
Man.
wicked, but it's the same time. If we are in the end times, and we are, why wouldn't God send everybody to every industry as the final, like, look, this is the last, you know what I'm saying? Just, this is the last push. That's just how I look at it. I know everybody, I think people starting to see that more now. But I seen, what was it called? It was the two on the Shade Room, the Holy Girls. That's what they call themselves. They're Christian rappers. I don't know if you've seen them, know them. I don't want to pronounce their names wrong, but they were on the Shade
Yeah.
Room being interviewed about what they look for in a man. One, I think she's married, or maybe they both are married, but I know one is married. They were talking about that. Like, that was on the Shade Room, a very dark platform. Now, I do get my stuff from the Shade Room when I do the Mental Man Monday stream, just to see what's going on and
Mhm.
to like comment on things as far as like, the breaking it down. But we know it's mess. Just for anybody who think they want to start a podcast. So is it you? Do you think you want to start a podcast? Cool. Let's be real. Watch this. So we don't need another podcast that sound like everybody else, right? We got enough of them. We're gonna talk about those today. But saying the same stuff with no structure, no message, no plan, that ain't good. Now that's where I come in. Me, right here, Head Honcho. All right. So I have a new podcast package. It's called the Legacy Launchpad. Now, what is this? This is for podcasters who fall in the personal development influencer space. So, who is that? That would be obviously personal development. That's pretty broad, but coaches and speakers, Christian-based influencers, faith influencers, maybe a pastor, a church, any type of course creator, education, mental health, wellness, nutritionist, all that good stuff. If you are trying to help the betterment of other people, fitness too, then this is for you. I will help you build your podcast from the ground up. This includes toning up, giving you the message, your niche, your show structure, the episode outlines, the intros, outros, descriptions, all of you. You show up to record and I build your legacy. If you're ready to stop playing, let's get it cracking. So the fact that they were even like I see it with that, so it's just little things like that. I think you have to have an eye to see. Now, you're a rapper, artist. I don't want to just say rapper, but artist. What are some of the topics that you rap about or sing about or make music about, and what inspired that?
Yeah. I'm a personal person.
Yeah.
I'm a people person. And I believe that, I believe what the Bible says, people are the crown of God's creation. He has a special purpose for us. So a lot of my music is based off of like the personal experience. It's so many people in this world, 7 billion plus people, and there's so many things out of each of our lives that are common. So because I am Christian, I have the ability to not only talk about things that are talked about at church in a religious way, but able to still bring those truths into like those natural rooms, so we can see how the light still overshines the darkness. Because honestly, that's what my platform and my message is about. I'm here to testify about the light that's greater than me, because I didn't have that light in my life. And then he came into my life and he showed me who he truly was and, how he truly is. And I believe that everybody should be able to experience that. So it's a mix between, like I said, testifying about God's goodness, his glory, and bringing his light into this world. So, people can expect from me, like I said, you can expect to hear my testimony. You can expect me to talk about the different things that we go through in this world, like relationships, having to make it through this journey of life, dealing with people, because that's what's most important. It's all these different things we have to touch on, but we always have to go back to people. So but I talk about stuff like relationships,
Because you're married,
ambition.
right?
Yes. I got married in August this year.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. How's it been thus far?
Oh man, I'm super grateful, like, to be in this day and age, because I didn't see this coming. Like, I knew once I chose to be who I wanted to be with that, eventually we're going to get married. But I'm talking about like 5 years ago, I've been knowing my wife for 5 years now. I wouldn't have really saw it happen in the way that it did. So the fact that God allowed the pieces to fall into place, man, is wonderful. I'm seeing increases in places that I couldn't imagine that God would have been touching.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Now, before we go to the next part, just after my final question before the next part. So, you obviously a believer, you're in the faith. We know that. I mean, we can see it. We about several minutes, quite a few in, right? How does this affect the way you evaluate a conspiracy theory?
Now, I mean, I've been thinking and talking about conspiracy theories for a minute now. Like, I had to be that person that people look at like, all right, bro, what's going on?
Yeah.
So I've been on both sides of the spectrum, and I think that's why it's good for me to speak about certain things. But ultimately, it's like you have to take it back to the word, and I think that's why I said that is gonna come out throughout the show, because there's different layers, that you have to break down. There's a spiritual aspect. and that's kind of in the air and outside of our control. There's the psychological aspect, which is all you, is you versus you basically. And then there's the physical aspect where you have to balance everything together and then, like I said, deal with the people. So it affects me in different types of ways because it's heavy to balance. And then there
Yeah.
are conspiracy theories. So, it's already you're looking for pieces, instead of just putting the puzzle together, you got to look for the pieces.
Right. All right. So now when I ask, I have only one definition today. So when I ask this word, I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind, and there is no right or wrong answer. Are you ready?
Let's go.
When you hear the word or phrase rabbit hole, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The deep.
All right. Good. So obviously the first definition said rabbit's burrow, but it says used to refer to a bizarre, confusing, or nonsensical situation or environment, typically one from which it is difficult to extricate oneself. Then the sentence they use is he'll continue fear mongering to promote his agenda, no matter how far deep down the rabbit hole it takes him. Even that definition to me is still a little like they're trying to make it seem like the rabbit hole is fake. That's the conspiracy that I got from that. Maybe I'm reading a little too deep. That's just me. All right, now let's jump into everybody's segment. What does this have to do with mental health? So before I get into my things, I have to state, well, realistically, this topic has a lot to do with mental health because honestly, you can drive yourself crazy. It's not funny, but I remember it was somebody said, and when I went down a rabbit hole on TikTok, and then at 3:00 in the morning, I just saw Whitney Houston run across my room. Like, y'all playing, but like I get what they saying. Like, you start seeing stuff, you start being freaked out, and it does happen. Do you now? Let me ask you about conspiracy theories. Are you at this point in your life? Because I could tell you used to be a researcher about it. Like you used to be a journalist. You probably could have. You was an unofficial journalist on it.
Man,
Are you still that way, or is it just kind of like you just look into stuff just a little bit now, or it depends on what it is?
No, I'm not actually that way. I will say it kind of depends on what it is because there's so many things that are deemed conspiracies. But what I realize is that some things are just true and we don't know about them. So I would say at a certain point, I'm just educating myself, just going a little bit deeper and reading about things rather than going down the rabbit hole of like, let me learn about this. Because I don't see everything, but I do see some of the same patterns, those same characteristics that the domain of darkness tries to pull up with to take our minds away from what actually matters. Because I feel like that's what's at the bottom of conspiracy, anyways.
Yeah. So now before I go to my first point, now I don't want to do that because we talking about politics next week. But did anything that I said in my happy hour segment have you to raise a brow?
I wouldn't say raise a brow, but give me a quick overview of the point that you went through.
Well, I talked about Donald Trump, and then I talked about how do y'all let Nicki Minaj speak on. I talked about Donald Trump being a person where he's not a savior. I don't trust in any politician, and I'm not telling people not to vote. A lot of people didn't vote this last election, but they're not gonna tell y'all that. As I said, and I'll say again. But I was just talking about just Donald Trump. Maybe what if he's actually doing stuff behind the scenes that is actually benefits us, but is made to seem like he's this just demon and devil. And like I said, it don't help. He's not helping his case because he is unhinged. He is rude. He is, but what if that's the case? And then I said with Nicki Minaj, like, why is of all people, how is she being used to speak on Christians being persecuted in Nigeria?
Yeah. So actually, I did raise a brow, but not in a bad way. In like he might be onto something.
Yeah,
because I've seen that pattern too, and it's not something that I'm 100% like, oh no, support. Like I said, I don't support Donald Trump. I didn't vote for Trump. I actually voted against Trump, but that's another conversation, right? But what I will say is, a lot of people, because we're listening to what the world is telling us rather than actually looking at what's going on, we might fall into the trap, like you said there. they're painting a certain picture about him, and you have to actually have discernment. You have to look into why these things are going on. And there's a lot of different things that he's doing, that if you just look at it from the outside, you might just read past it. But if you look into it, you might find something that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with you, bro.
Yeah. So the first point I have is willpower. It says conspiracy theories and mental health blog post. It explains how anxiety, stress, and social isolation and feelings of being othered or excluded can make someone vulnerable to conspiratorial thinking. Now, as me, I've always been. Would you be able to say that you could identify as a person? Well, there's a lot of identities these days, but that you could identify as a person who was maybe like, do you have siblings?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I see I'm only child, so it's a little different. But like a loner, do you maybe feel like the black sheep of the family? You felt like nobody really understood you. Did you ever feel that way?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I used to say that I was an antisocial extrovert.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've definitely felt that way, and I've always been like a independent type of person.
Yeah.
I got one big brother, and I'm a big brother because I got three little sisters. So I don't really depend on the younger generation. I've always kind of like rolled with my bros, so I'm not really around that right now. So I've been chilling by myself, but now it's different because I got the body of Christ. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
learning how to not be that way.
Yeah, I think sometimes those independent thinkers, we are more drawn to these type of topics because it's like, I think unintentionally we've developed personalities that go against the grain on purpose. So sometimes
Mhm.
I think that we were already against the masses, and I think that we just eventually that just became who we was. We just kind of fell into that, because I've always been a independent thinker. People would say like, you sound crazy at first, and then it came out later you was right the whole time. And I'm not right about everything.
Not
But,
everything.
but I'm a know-it-all about what I know. And we need to quote that. I'm a know-it-all about what I know. Because I'm
That's
not
a
a
good way to
know-it-all
put
about
it.
everything. Because even one of my favorite things, and I tell people all the time, I've never been wrong about a person, even if I didn't believe it. Because it's people that I will be like, someone's like, they ain't right. They ain't right. And I'll be like, maybe I'm tripping. Nah, you ain't tripping. You was right the whole time. That's a gift, though. That ain't from me.
Mhm.
So another article, people drawn to conspiracy theories, it says it outlines psychological traits, anxiety, existential fear, need for control that often underline conspiracy beliefs. And sometimes I think anybody who may struggle with a spirit of control, they want to keep going. They want to find it, want to find out. And sometimes, and like I said, you will, as the old people say, you'll run yourself crazy.
Mhm.
And it's just ended up in the padded cell because you didn't went too far off the deep end. The next one says that a research article called "The Concomitants of," I probably chopped that word all the way up, of conspiracy concerns. It says shows that individuals endorsing conspiracy beliefs have lower well-being and higher suicidal ideation, weaker social networks, and more psychological distress. Now, see, you're a little younger. What year was you born? 2000 and what?
2020.
That's 2020. 2000 what?
2002.
Okay. I was born in 94, right?
Yeah.
So I remember Y2K. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah. So I remember when people was in this book, saying the world was going to end in the year 2000, and people been trying to predict the end of the world. But this is the thing. I think y'all need to stop playing because y'all might predict the end of y'all world, or y'all might be bringing the end of your life into existence by coming into agreement. What do we read at the beginning? The thing about your thoughts. And even with me, like I've always been the dangerous part of being a heavy thinker, because sometimes it's a blessing and a curse, because you can think things into existence that is good and think things into existence that's bad, because you keep giving life to it in your brain and in your mind. And then if you give into fear, what was it in the book of Job when he talks about what I fear came to be, so it's like you can fear monger yourself into seeing something or having something happen. Do you believe in aliens?
I believe in aliens not in the way that they're portrayed, but in the way that they may be.
Yeah. I believe I heard two different conspiracies on aliens. Okay, and I'm
Throw them
jumping
at
ahead of
me.
myself. Huh?
Throw them at me, man.
Before we get into the challenge that section. So I'll try not to think too much about it. I was under the impression that, and maybe it's 3, aliens were really just demons in disguise, and that they're gonna say that they're aliens, but really they're demons.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was that aliens are actually like a hybrid of different it was the third one, I think, is that they're the Nephilim. The second one, I mean, is that the Nephilim. And then the third one is that they're like a hybrid. It's like they aren't on another planet, but they aren't necessarily it's like they like demons, and it's like they like a literal mix, like a mix.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, if I believe in the Bible, it's like if there's heaven and hell, it's like, well, then they didn't come from heaven. So then you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's like they're not full it's like they're like some type of hybrid. What did any of those 3 things that you believe, or do you believe a fourth ideology?
I would say those 3 are like a culmination of what I believe, right? Because if you just think about the word alien, they call foreign people from other countries aliens.
Yeah.
So anything that's foreign to us is actually, it could be considered an alien. And then, like you said, demons in disguise, Nephilims, or hybrids. So this makes me think about one of those conspiracies, right? Flat Earth versus the globe idea. And how does outer space actually, correlate to our world? Yeah, we look up and see the sky, and we can notice the constellations. They teach us certain things in school, like in science class and stuff like that. But I think if you misunderstand the ideology of the universe and space, and you don't really begin to build biblical understanding with it, then it could be far off. Like the way that they put aliens on TV. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it like that.
You remember
Like,
Ben 10? Did you watch that show?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
I love that show.
Bro, that's one of, I'm just glad you brought that up. I'm sorry watching that again. But nah, bro, I do definitely believe that aliens are like otherworldly beings, right? And then the Bible says that a third of the angels came down when Lucifer came down. So it's kind of adding up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, for sure. So before we go to the next segment, not the final segment, as a youth mentor, what's one thing you wish young men knew about believing everything they see or share online? Because if you're working with middle school, like I used to teach middle school, so I know, like, I'm a little older than you, so we had internet. Definitely, because when I was in middle school, I was 07, 08. So we had internet, but we didn't have it on the phones like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this generation glued to their phone, everything they see, they always reposting. One person I know that some of the kids used to always repost, and you live in Houston, was Andrew Tate. And I agree with some things he be saying, but not every. I don't think that kids should be following everything that he say.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your take on that? How they're dealing with the scene and sharing online? Because it starts a lot of their beefs too.
Man, it's crazy because it gives them access to everything.
Yeah.
So you can't limit them.
Yeah.
You can't limit because they're already not limited. They have unlimited access. Basically, this phone is powerful tool. So I wish that, or I hope and pray that they learn how to like steward the phone and use it for a fruitful purpose. Not just fall into everything that they see, because you have to decide your reality, because it will be decided for you if you don't. And you're going to be on your phone. Like me, I make music. I was in college for marketing, so I have marketing skills and stuff like that. So I'm on social media because my goal is to be fruitful and effective. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be on there, but I'm like, I gotta be on here. So the way that I have to, work on that is not using it for like unfruitful purposes. Don't get on there and scroll, and just don't be on there doing what I'm not supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, like we said last week, and for those that don't know, I do social media content for the people. But my guest last week was like, he pays somebody to do his stuff. So it's like, that might just be a bill you might need to just start working in, and just find somebody to do it for you, because it's like, you don't want to be on there, but you have to. So it's like, just keep that in mind. So yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next segment, which is I challenge that. And we just kind of challenging some things. Now, I have to play devil's advocate because I am a great thinker. We're obviously believers. We believe in the Bible, everything from front to back, no ifs, ands, no, well, this contradict. But have you ever wondered what if it wasn't real? What if this Bible we believe in, the God that we serve, what if it was, what if it just didn't exist? What if this was all just a lie? Have you ever contemplated that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately every human would have to face that idea at some point. And I've kind of had to face that and fight with that. And I think that it grows over time. It wasn't like a let me approach this idea type of thing. I think that was always in the back of my mind and it grew over time until I started to fight it, with actually learning what these things were, actually learning what's going on, so I definitely had to fight that idea and it can be very convincing because you're believing in something that you don't see,
Mm-hmm.
so at a point you'll start to check out your own self, your own mind, like, am I seeing what am I believing what I'm seeing? But you have to really be present in these moments, so I definitely had to deal with that for sure.
Before I say what I'm gonna say, I'm gonna ask this question: how many of things that you once believed online that you once believed online that you later found out was false, and how did you handle that like betrayal?
As far as like conspiracies
Yeah,
and
whatever you believe, like this is the truth, and then you like, dang, that wasn't right.
mm, that's a really good question. um
If you want to think about it, I can say what I was about to say, and maybe that'll jog your memory.
yeah, go ahead.
So, one, to answer what I just stated about the whole, what if the Bible isn't real? And what if God isn't real? If God isn't real and the Bible isn't real, based on everything that we believed, I seen a video from years ago, Cindy Trim. You know who Cindy Trim is?
I've heard of her, but I can't put a face to her name.
Well, she's actually really big on like the mind and thought processes and stuff. And that's really what I like. But she made a comment. She was like, and if it isn't real, what did I lose? What did I lose if okay, you believed in this God, this man that sits in the sky, let's go to that grants wishes, and you just have to abide by these rules and have to be a blind follower. And it's like, well, if you're saying stuff like that, I know for a fact you haven't had an encounter, because if you have, you wouldn't be saying stuff like that. Not even just on no scary encounter, like a real, like some things that's happening,
Mhm.
um but it's just like, what am I missing out on? Because all of these people who say they woke and they found, and oh, I found the truth, y'all miserable. Y'all are walking around angry most of the time. The ones who did find the truth, you're not living in purpose. Most of y'all aren't. Y'all are going around the same mountain. You know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to attack nobody's job, but like you're working these dead end jobs and not even like you're not really doing much.
Mm.
And it's most cases, and it's like, but you're so wise. I just think if you're so wise and you figured it out, then why are you still in the same predicaments that you are? Because you usually aren't in the best ones. Now, what's something that I believe they later found out was false? um what was something I believe? It was something that was just like, and I was like, dang, that's straight not true. um Dang, I had it on the tip of my tongue and I just forgot it. Oh well.
No,
Oh well.
maybe when I say what I say, maybe it spark your mind again.
Okay.
That's normally how it works.
Yeah.
But one of the big things, and this could be kind of general, but I think it's important because it still is big and it's important, because when it comes to conspiracies, I said a prayer a few years ago to God, like, show me what the devil is doing. Like, I don't want to be in the dark no more. Like, show
Yeah.
me. And that was before I went into the rabbit hole.
Hmm.
So on the other end of it, I recognize if you put 100 conspiracies on the table, you have to look at the patterns. You're going to see, okay, this is maybe the area that he wanted to attack the largest. Like the same way, um, when the darkness attacks humanity, one of the biggest places that it attacks is men. You know, it wants to take
Mhm.
the head of the household out. You know, so you have to recognize those type of patterns. And one of the big things that I had to recognize that wasn't true, um, like black people sit on a pedestal in the world, and it's weird. I don't exactly know 100% why, but I might be on to something. But there's two conversations, right? We have this conversation, this black and white conversation, and
Yeah,
it's representation. The same way you have a checkerboard, you know, you want to make these opposing sides when in reality they go together. You know, they call us black people, we're really brown. You know, it's I thought that me being a black person gave me a like a higher advantage in the general area. You know what I'm saying? Just from watching the way that the world goes, even though life in society is like is is striking for us.
yeah,
But at the same time, like it was this pride that I had, like this black pride, you know, rather than, you know, actually we don't need this black pride. Yes, you're supposed to be grateful about who you are and, you know, remember your lineage, your family and these things, but you don't need to, just because, you know, white supremacy is real doesn't mean that we need to come back on the other side and say black supremacy. You know,
yeah,
because truly we're all human. We all should be together. So that's one of the big things that I had to like overcome is like I wasn't really like, oh, black power, black supremacy, hating other people, but I still had a pride in myself that made me feel like, you know, I deserved something else.
yeah. I definitely agree with that. And I'm trying to think, what's something? I guess I can go back to my original point when I believed that, you know, it really ain't. I think it's a weak one, honestly, but I'm just gonna go just is I feel like when I do my live stream, I'll think of something and I can when I recap this episode and I'll probably have an answer then. But I know I believed when I first saw the Illuminati videos, I was 15. Because you know they used to be on them tapes. I don't know if you remember that. And it was like DVDs that was going around breaking it down and the boule and all that stuff. And I remember seeing it because that's when I first when I because I always wanted to be some type of media entertainment. So I remember seeing those videos and I saw that basically everybody was a devil worshiper. And I was like, and I remember just being, be honest, I was heartbroken. I'm like, well, I guess I just gotta settle with being a lawyer. And it's so funny because everything is full circle now, and it's like, see what I'm doing and what I'm in the industry I'm in and what I'm gonna be used to do. So it's just like he tried to get me thinking in to settle and just be like, well, just go do this
Hmm.
versus, you know, being just tricked into just being like, you know, you just tricked into just settling because oh, you know, see, yeah, you can't go there. See. Um, okay, let's jump to the final segment for today, which is the weekly sabbatical. And in this segment, we just kind of reminisce on some things and then we bring up like some truths that kind of come about. So, real quick, do you think that there's a difference between questioning the system and being addicted to fear? And how do you personally check which side you're on?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a difference. And the difference is the fear. You know, that and that's kind of goes to what I was speaking on earlier too. The first thing you have to set your intention. You know, if somebody put their boot on your neck, I mean, it's not hard to decide that's not what you want. So you have to get up and fight out of that. But you know, we're not in that like America, it has like this privileged type of evil, you know, to where it makes you comfortable. So it's not going to feel like a boot on your neck. You know, it might feel different. You know, it might feel subtle, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that you have to recognize what your faith means to you, you know, and that's a personal thing, you know, like me, if anybody asks me what I do it for, you know, what's my purpose, why do I do it, my answer is going to be, you know, it's going to be real and it's going to be authentic, it's going to be similar because I only have, you know, one main purpose, which is to love God and love people. It breaks down in smaller ways, but ultimately like the purposes of my that purpose for me, like the different things that really stir me to get back to that, you know, is different. So I think is recognizing like when you're operating out of fear because the characteristics the characteristics will take you where you don't want to go. Like if you believe in God to give you a house and you know you start thinking, oh, maybe I won't qualify, and or maybe all of these things, like you said, you let your own mind become your reality. So you have to be you have to get yourself out of your own box and get out your own way, but you have to actually sometimes you got to face those things that seems bigger than you, and then you'll break through it.
So now you work with kids, you're a critical thinker, right? And at the core of it, it can go really right or really left when these conspiracy theories is critical thinking. So how do you utilize critical thinking? And then how do you help the people you mentor critically think?
um I think it's mainly about like understanding yourself, because like I said, between your spirit, your soul, and your body, right? That was the main awakening for me. So a little quick testimony about me. Like I said, I was born in Dayton, Ohio. So I saw my brother when I was probably like in kindergarten. I saw him playing football, and I put his helmet on my head, and I've never looked back from that. So I started playing football in third grade all the way up through high school, and that's how it landed me here in Houston. I was a preferred walk-on at at the University of Houston. So my whole life was based off of using my gifts, using my body, right? And I did other things too, like I used to speak and stuff. I always loved music, so I guess I should have known that I would land in this area, but
Yeah.
I didn't understand how to operate within my soul and my spirit. I was living off my body. I was betting on my body. I'm like, I'm going to the NFL. I was literally betting on my body. So I didn't go deeper to like actually understand my mind. I would say I was a critical thinker, but I didn't really know how to, operate above emotional intelligence. I think that's one of the main things is emotional intelligence, you know, because like I said, when we talk about patterns and frameworks, um, a big thing that prevents people from understanding God may be, actually understanding how the Father, the Son, and the Spirit works.
Yeah.
And I think that may have been my problem. But once I, started reading more of his word and stuff, the best framework that I would say, if anybody on here is like, how do you think in patterns or frameworks, like how do you get into that area? The best framework that I've ever encountered or know of is my own body, my own temple, the spirit, the soul, and the body. It's a revelation of what God already set up, and it's a reflection of everything that He created. So you can explore life and creation, and it'll reflect you back to your body, but you have to have emotional intelligence to be able to look beyond your own world, and have that humility. That word, what is it, sonder? To
Uh-huh.
to think of someone else in a way, think less of yourself, but you know think bigger. Let let your emotions don't let your emotions lead you, but let them lead you to God.
Great segue, because now my next question is, what is your response to the Christians? And it's usually the older generation, but that's the devil. Oh, that's the devil. Oh, there go the devil. Oh no, you can't do that. That's the devil. And here's the thing. And before you say something, a lot of things that they not everything, but a lot of things they weren't wrong about.
Mm,
Right. Like I watch anime. Certain animes I won't watch just because it's just too much, right? And everybody's convictions are the same, are
mhm,
different.
mhm,
So they may say, some people like, I don't watch anime at all. And it's some people who will be like, but in the same breath, reality, you literally can't watch anything if you go off of, and certain things you shouldn't watch. But
mhm,
if that's the case, then you literally can't watch anything. Because if you go off well, that's the devil. Oh, there go the devil. And that's, to me, backing up my point, another reason why we need people in the entertainment space that is, a believer. Because if these projects, these movies, these TV shows, these music videos all are presented as one thing and have these demonic undertones, why can't we have someone present them as one thing and they have Christian undertones? See, that's how I
mm.
look at it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Most people say, "Oh no, we can't do that," but I just think that they're low level thinking. But what would you say in their response to that? Like, oh, that's the devil.
Um, I used to. So I've been that person. Like even with the conspiracy stuff, like nah, y'all tripping. Like I'll be on that for real. But I had to understand, there's a religious spirit, within the religious environment, and that will point different things out that may not be true. And what it really will do is begin to accuse you. And
Mhm.
understanding life and God and the Bible and all of these different things, is understanding that God is the lawgiver. You know, he's the kingdom of heaven is it's a government. You know, it's a never ending government. So I'm also going to be talking on my platform, you know, once I get started, we get these things rolling. The difference between what's actually lawful and what's actually legal. You
Yeah.
know, because I think that we tend to lean towards the misconceptions, you know, more than what's actually true. And like I said, I was that person. So I do see the older generation, like you said, it could be mostly the older generation, but you said something that I felt that you said it do be true sometimes. And that's the part that hurt. It's like your
Yeah.
grandma telling you not to touch that stove, or like don't go out there and hang with them, and you just go do what you're doing, and then you have to learn the hard way. It's like
Yeah.
that. It's that type of situation, but it makes a harder conversation, and it really can influence your mental health. And if you don't learn, you know, what's actually true about it, then it can influence you in the wrong way, because it did that to me. You know,
Yeah.
I've always respected my parents. And I never looked at them as those people that's like, oh, that's the devil, you know, that's like fear mongering or just titling things. They weren't like that at all. But because I grew up and then, you know, God opened my eyes to things and I started to see certain stuff, I became more sensitive to it, because that's naturally going to happen. You know, you start to notice these different things and you're going to, you know, that's your reaction. You know, when you are being intentional and knowing what you want, you're going to feel attacked, because that's actually, you know, that's a part of what's going on. So um I would say, to conclude, that you have to learn for yourself
Yeah.
what's actually, you know, is this actually spiritual demonic activity? Is this actually the devil? Because that's just a title, you know, like the same way we say God, that's just a title. You could be saying God and be talking about anything,
Yeah, you
you
got to be
know.
specific. They said they was like people saying God on stage, like what God they talking about? So you got to be specific, you know. And when you saying title, you could be just saying, "Oh, this is dark" or "This is evil," which obviously correlates with the enemy. But it's just like, you know, the way they're using it, because it's like, you know, you calling out, oh, like I think my great grandmother, I never met her, but I know she used to be big on like cards. She'd be like, "Oh no, don't play with them cards like Uno
Mm.
and spades. So them tarot, that's like tarot cards." But then you died holding grudges, so it's like,
And then, you know, you'll say something like that. Me personally, a part of my testimony is actually getting tarot readings. You know, I've actually got that and actually had to learn, like, no, son, don't do this, don't touch that. You know, but see how if you demonize Uno and spades, you see how, you know, it's gonna bring out and this wasn't, I never had that told to me, but I'm saying, like, our generation is, they can be rebellious once you place all these labels on them. They don't want to be
right,
labeled and held down and shackled. So it's like demonizing things that aren't true. But catch this too. The other segment that we had, when you asked me about things that I learned that wasn't true, that's one of the things that I had to learn that wasn't true for me, that
yeah,
I'm demonizing all of these things. In reality, it's just me.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's the thing too, because I know how somebody he said he had to catch himself because sometimes he can be a little religious at times. He struggled with that sometimes, but like the whole phrase, the whole we talked about really early this season, the Christian clubs. And when people hear that, they're like, Christian club. Why would y'all call them the club? It's too much like the word. I'm like, bro, they're not twerking, they're not drinking, they're not smoking, they're not playing any secular music. So it's like, why? So it's because they put club on it, it's a problem. I just think that
Man,
uh, that's nitpicking, but that's that Pharisee spirit, because that's really what it is. Anybody with a nitpicking, even if they ain't into the word, that's a Pharisee spirit. They just find something wrong.
yeah.
Um, So now I got a source as we wrap up, and this is by John Piper, and this actually came out after 2021, how we should respond to Christian conspiracy theories. And it said that's not a new question. In every generation, there have been predictions of the end of the world, speculations about world leader as the Antichrist,
Hmm.
and calamities that definitely signify the near the end of the world, and political events that definitely fulfill last day biblical prophecies, and bizarre sequence of events that cause a spinning out of conspiratorial webs. This is an uncanny way of being spiritual, of being self-confirming, that they peter out in the end and are forgotten a few decades until they start all over again. It says, what is needed is the awakening of the heart to superior worth of the most important thing is scripture that's not new. What's new is not the alarmist mentalities or conspiracy theories or vocal doomsayers. What's new is the presence of social media and the speed and ease and extent in which these theories spread. So that we would devote ourselves, so what we devote ourselves to. It says fascination with the number and the mark of the beast, which is not the essence, or we devote ourselves to the understanding and the love for the blood of the lamb and the readiness to bear public witness to greatness and a willingness to sacrifice our lives because of his supreme value. And then it ends off saying that basically just reiterates just the goodness of God and the love of that. But I do know one thing, I ain't gonna lie, I never believed in the pandemic. I always thought, I think I was scared for the first week. And after that, I was telling people, this is a hoax. Y'all are a joke for believing this. Like, hey, I call hell. You're stupid. You're going to die. Well, I didn't mean to say die because we on YouTube and they'll try to block it out. But it's late in the episode, so it should be all right. But you're going to be unalive. You're stupid. All these things. And then they released a documentary was a little later that basically said we shouldn't have made y'all get that shot. I don't know if you got it. I did not. If you did, you know, it is what it is. But you said no. Okay, good stuff.
Nah, I didn't. It said good
Good
stuff.
for you. Good for you. Good for you. So let's get into the question and challenge for the week. And what is your take on these conspiracy theories, just in general? I want the people to let me know what they think. As always, y'all, there's no right or wrong answer. This is your opinion. So yeah. Hold on. All right, y'all. So good stuff. All right, so let's end up with my question and challenge for the week, which is, what is your take on these conspiracy theories? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's your opinion. We didn't cover a lot today, a lot more than expected. I'm sure there'll be more that'll be covered when we do the recap of the live stream. Anything you want to add today? Anything we left out? Promote, highlight, all that good stuff.
No, I think that you covered the great portion, because psychologically navigating through life is one of the most important things, because God gives you free will, and
Right.
that all of these things go hand in hand. And my belief with God, I always, just generally believed that he was real, but my life generally started to get better, and I started to enjoy my life. And, like you asked me how I'm doing today, I'm truly grateful. I'm truly grateful. I'm getting off here grateful, and even more than I was when I got on, so um the enemy works off of consent. When Jesus died and he rose with all power, he said that he will give that to us. So I want to challenge the listeners in the audience to use the authority and power that God gives you, and not to allow the enemy to use his authority and power over you, because God has already gave you the victory. He's overcome the enemy already. So what I would leave, because we covered the span of generally what I believe anybody would need to know when it comes to conspiracy, social media, how to think and navigate through this time. But to put the cherry on top, understand God's government,
Yeah.
his covenants, and what the future is going to look like is not determined by anything else other than the creator of the the time. So just keep that in mind, because I know you're going to be talking about politics next week.
Yeah.
So I want to put that in their minds, because it seems like a big conversation, but I'll end it with this, right? I was having Sunday school maybe one Sunday this year. I can't remember when. And we were talking about, I can't even remember the subject of the entire lesson, but I know at the end it had a little text, and it was talking about the new world order of the world. We
Yeah.
always hear that, like, if that might be the major conspiracy theory, right? If that's the mother of conspiracy theories, new world order. It said God's new world order, or they're talking about Trump's golden age. It's like God's golden age. And I said, oh, why haven't I never thought about it that way?
Yeah.
I done went through all this stressing about all these conspiracies, but I didn't think, oh, at the point where the enemy would try to end the world is the exact same point that God would create the new one and, bring it in. So that's what I'm expecting. So I would encourage the other people to do the same.
All right, good stuff. So thank you again for joining. Next week, politics. We're gonna see how they go. But PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And as always, remember, I love us for real.